Welcome to our video about the fascinating world of Pokemon and their placement on the Tree of Life. Today, we are taking a closer look at Pidgeot and its relationship to Charizard. As we discussed in episode 2, birds and dragons in the Pokemon world are both Archosaur, and thus, both groups are linked. If you want to learn more about Archosaur, please check out the video about Charizard. Now, we will focus more directly on Pidgeot and the class of birds. Birds are a clade within the Maniraptora, small theropod dinosaurs that share a highly mobile wrist and, in their evolutionary history, developed advanced feathers and flapping flight. Birds live on all continents. To date, over 10,980 extant bird species are known, which are assigned to 2,385 genera, 253 families, and 44 orders. Additionally, 160 species have gone extinct in historical times. Birds, like all terrestrial vertebrates, have two pairs of limbs, with the front pair modified into wings. All recent birds possess a beak without real teeth. However, some extinct species had teeth. The beak in birds consists of bone substance with a horned sheath. Only in pigeons, columbiforms, and waterfowl, and seriforms, is the bone mass of the beak covered with a soft skin. The bird lung, with its air sacs, is more complexly constructed than that of all other vertebrates. It is generally undisputed that birds descend from the diapsid evolutionary line of amniotes. Their closest living relatives are considered to be crocodiles. Together, crocodiles and birds form the diapsid subgroup of Archosaur. The skeletons of the first birds come from deposits of the Upper Jurassic, about 150 million years ago, and show, according to most researchers, a close relationship to small theropods from the group Maniraptora. According to the rules of cladistics, which are the scientific standard today, birds are therefore also dinosaurs. The most famous evolutionary link between reptiles and birds is the genus Archaeopteryx. The wings of Archaeopteryx have a great similarity to those of modern birds. Fossils of this genus were found in the Solnhofen limestone from the Upper Jurassic period. For a long time, Archaeopteryx was assumed to occupy an intermediate position between the two classes, as it seemed to show a mosaic of both reptilian and avian features. For this reason, incomplete and poorly preserved specimens, such as the Haarlem specimen in the Taylor's Museum, were long not recognized as fossils of this animal. With the discovery of more and more feathered dinosaurs since the 1990s, it has become clear that many features of Archaeopteryx, previously thought to be typical of birds, were also present in many other theropod species. Birds are therefore increasingly seen as flight-adapted, but otherwise typical dinosaurs. It remains unclear whether Archaeopteryx was a true urvogel, protobird, a direct ancestor of modern birds. Many researchers believe it belonged to a dead-end evolutionary line. The Upper Jurassic Archaeopteryx still had jaws with teeth, a long tail vertebra, and movable, clawed middle hand bones. It probably had a constant, actively regulated body temperature, homeothermy, as is also suspected for its non-avian dinosaur relatives. The fossil birds found in the sedimentary rocks of the Upper Cretaceous were also toothed. Today's bird groups with their toothless jaws only emerged in the Cenozoic. According to genetic analyses, the loss of hard tooth enamel must have occurred more than 100 million years ago in the Lower Cretaceous, in the evolutionary line leading to modern birds, after the divergence of the line leading to Ichthyornis. In the most recent common ancestor of the two main lines of modern birds, Paleognathy and Neognathy, all genes responsible for tooth development were supposedly deactivated. While the oldest unequivocal fossil evidence of crown group birds comes from the late Upper Cretaceous, birds with anatomy close to that of modern birds are already known from the late Lower Cretaceous. An example of such a representative is Gansus humanensis from the Shago Formation. In general, birds already exhibited great species diversity during the Cretaceous period. A relatively closely related group to Gansus, but anatomically less advanced Cretaceous birds, are the Enantiorniths, whose fossil remains were found, among other places, in northeastern China. At the mass extinction 65.5 million years ago, Cretaceous Tertiary boundary, the non-avian dinosaurs went extinct. Birds and many other groups of organisms also suffered a significant loss of species and higher taxa. At the beginning of the Cenozoic, a multitude of new bird groups developed in a very short time from the presumably few surviving species, forming the basis of today's avifauna. Some of these groups became extinct again. Bird fossils from the Eocene confirm the presence of a diverse avifauna, with not all species assignable to groups living today. An example of representatives of extinct groups are large, carnivorous, flightless birds like the terror birds, which might have taken over the ecological role of theropods that went extinct at the end of the Cretaceous as top predators, until they were replaced by mammals. The first description of the small feathered dinosaur Caudipteryx in 1998 significantly contributed to the understanding of bird evolution, feather development, and part of bird flight. Accordingly, the bird ancestors initially developed feathers on both the forelimbs and hindlimbs, enabling them to glide from tree to tree. The wing formations on the hindlimbs were reduced over the course of evolution, leaving only the arm and hand feathers for flying. Some bird species, megapodes, use external heat sources to incubate their eggs. Most birds, however, incubate their eggs with breast and belly feathers. In some species, the sexes involved in incubation develop brood patches, featherless skin areas on the breast and belly, that allow better heat transfer to the eggs than through insulating feathers. In many species, both partners incubate, in others, only the female or, more rarely, exclusively the male, as in large ratites and the emperor penguin. The incubation temperature is about 34 degrees Celsius. Eggs are often turned during incubation to ensure even warming. Many other factors, such as sufficient moisture, no excessive warming from sunlight, and minimal shaking, are crucial for successful incubation. The shortest incubation period is 11 days, skylark, the longest about 12 weeks, kiwi. Just before hatching, the eggshell becomes thinner due to calcium resorption by the embryo. Young birds often start calling before hatching, serving to synchronize the hatching process or to strengthen the bond between parent and nestling. The chick rubs and pecks the shell from inside until a small hole forms. For this, a small, hard protuberance called the egg tooth develops on the tip of the upper beak, and in some bird species, on the lower beak, which falls off or recedes a few days after hatching. The entire hatching process takes from minutes to several days, depending on the bird species. Nestlings are usually naked and blind at hatching. Eyes and ear canals are still closed. They depend on external warmth, brooding, and regular feeding by the parents. Depending on the bird species, both parents or only the female brood. Many nestlings leave the nest just before reaching flight capability. At this point, the young bird is no longer called a nestling but a fledgling. Fledglings are further fed by the parents until they become independent. Nestling species include storks, pigeons, raptors, swifts, woodpeckers, and all songbirds. Precocial birds are covered in down feathers at hatching. Eyes and ears are fully developed. Most precocial species can feed themselves immediately after hatching. Depending on the species, they can walk, swim, and dive from day 1 or 2, under the guidance of the parents. The nest is never returned to after leaving it. Initially, they are usually brooded by the mother. Soft calls help parents communicate their location to the young, and vice versa. Until independence, the family spends time together. Precocial species include ducks and cranes. Unlike altricial birds, precocial birds are fully feathered at hatching, and their eyes and ears are fully developed. They stay in the nest or nearby until they achieve flight capability. Long-term, they cannot regulate their body temperature, requiring extended brooding. They achieve flight capability quite late, and, like altricial birds, are fed by the parents until independence. Precocial species include almost all gulls and penguins. Flight capability is secondarily lost in some bird species or groups, meaning they are flightless. This can be due to several reasons, such as adaptation to aquatic life, as seen in penguins of the southern hemisphere. The extinct great auk and the living alcids of the northern hemisphere show a tendency towards flightlessness, both groups flying underwater with their wings. The digestion of low-energy food requires a large and heavy digestive system. Grazing birds like geese are particularly heavy and cannot significantly increase in size due to flight constraints. Hence, flightless species have evolved among such dietary specialists, like the kakapo. Rapid running, like in ostriches and other large ratites in South America and Australia, can also lead to flightlessness. Lastly, the absence of ground-dwelling predatory mammals can also make the ability to fly unnecessary. Therefore, many inhabitants of isolated islands have lost their ability to fly. However, this has proved fatal for many species once predatory mammals, e.g., cats, rats, pigs, etc., were introduced by sailors. Examples of this include the now extinct dodo, Rhaphis cucullatus, on Mauritius, the New Caledonian kogu, Rhinochetos jubatus, the New Zealand takahe, Porphyrio mantelli, and the also flightless Galapagos cormorant, Nanopterum harisi, as well as the highly endangered South Island takahe and all species of kiwis. Owls can see better at night than diurnal birds or humans, however, their vision is more geared toward light gathering than sharpness. This works based on the same physics as bright lenses, which also work with low light but encounter sharpness problems, especially with depth of field. Peregrine falcons, on the other hand, are optimized for daytime hunting. They can spot and track small objects like prey birds over distances of more than a kilometer. At least small birds are capable of seeing UV light. There are some bird species where the genders do not differ in the visible light spectrum, but do so in UV light. Starlings, or some tit species, are examples of this. Depending on ecological adaptation, the ability for spatial vision varies greatly from species to species. In groups that are under high predation pressure, e.g., pigeons and game birds, the eyes are arranged on the sides of the head. This allows for an almost complete 360 degrees field of view, but the overlap of the visual fields, and thus the ability for spatial vision, is relatively low. The opposite extreme is found in owls. Their eyes are positioned side by side at the front of the head, resulting in a strong overlap of visual fields, which enhances their spatial vision. The limited lateral extension of the field of view is compensated by a highly flexible cervical spine. Owls can turn their heads up to 270 degrees. The sense of touch is crucial for many birds in searching for and consuming food. The beak and tongue of most birds are very sensitive to touch. Especially wading birds search for their food by probing the mud with their usually long beaks. Birds that climb on trees also orient themselves by feeling with their toes. Let's now discuss the order to which Pidgeot could be assigned: Passeriformes, or perching birds, which make up the largest order of birds with approximately 5,700 species. Passeriformes generally have one toe pointing backward and three toes pointing forward, an isodactyl arrangement, with tendons that are adapted to grip branches or the ground when the bird is perching or sleeping. They are also known as perching birds. Passeriformes are mostly small birds, compared to representatives of other orders. Their body length ranges from 6.5 centimeters, stub-tailed pygmy tyrant, to 120 centimeters, birds of paradise. Many passerines of higher latitudes are migratory birds, while resident birds are primarily found among species in the subtropics and tropics. The latter include species in the families of lyrebirds or bowerbird, where the ability to fly is poorly developed. The majority of passerines feed on invertebrates or plant seeds, often both. Exceptions to this general rule include some families living primarily in tropical rainforests, such as birds of paradise, the cotingas, and the manakins. They feed almost exclusively on fruits. Shrikes, on the other hand, are carnivores that hunt large insects and small vertebrates such as lizards and mice. Crossbills, however, live almost exclusively on conifer seeds as adult birds. Their beaks are crossed, allowing them to extract seeds from cones like tweezers. Dippers dive in shallow, fast-flowing streams for insects. They are the only passerines with this ability. For a few species, the use of tools in food acquisition has been described. For example, the woodpecker finch on the Galapagos Islands uses a stick or cactus spine to probe for insects living in the bark crevices of trees. Passerines are among the few vertebrates that cannot synthesize the necessary vitamin C on their own. They must therefore obtain it through their diet. As a family, I would choose the Bombycilidae, which externally matches Pidgeot very well. Which family would you choose? Write it in the comments. Bombycilidae are medium-sized birds with silky soft and dense feathers. Their plumage color is predominantly brown with some black, red, or yellow markings. They live nomadically, are mostly sociable, and feed on insects in summer and fruits and berries in winter. They lay 3 to 6 eggs, which are incubated for 12 to 14 days. The young birds fledge after 15 to 19 days. That's it for Pidgeot. In the next episode, we will analyze the relationship between Venusaur and Raticate. Leave a subscription and a like. See you next time.